Wallet lost 50 years ago is returned. Contents change the fate of an entire town. Hello, welcome. Leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. In the quaint town of Millbrook, a young journalist's world turns upside down when a long-lost wallet surfaces during a building's demolition. As she delves deeper into its contents, she uncovers a web of lies that threatens to unravel the very fabric of her community. With each revelation, she's forced to question everything she thought she knew about her town, her loved ones, and herself. The relentless summer heat bore down on Millbrook's main street as Zoe Thompson, a 28-year-old journalist for the local newspaper, the Millbrook Chronicle, hurried towards the old Jameson building. Her curly hair, pulled back into a messy bun, bobbed with each determined step. The once grand structure, now a dilapidated eyesore, was finally being demolished after years of debate and red tape. As Zoe approached the cordoned-off area, she noticed a small crowd gathering. Her keen eyes, sharpened by years of chasing stories, spotted Mayor Richard Caldwell engaged in a heated discussion with the foreman. Curiosity piqued. She edged closer, straining to hear their conversation over the roar of heavy machinery. "I don't care what you found, Jenkins. This demolition needs to happen now," the mayor hissed, his usually affable demeanor replaced by an uncharacteristic urgency. Jenkins, a burly man with a salt and pepper beard, stood his ground. "Sir, with all due respect, we can't just ignore this. Could be important." Zoe's journalistic instincts kicked into overdrive. She cleared her throat, catching both men's attention. "Excuse me, gentlemen. Zoe Thompson, Millbrook Chronicle. Is there a problem with the demolition?" Mayor Caldwell's face tightened, but he quickly plastered on a smile. "Ms. Thompson, always a pleasure. No problem at all. Just a minor delay. Nothing newsworthy, I assure you." But Jenkins wasn't having it. He turned to Zoe, ignoring the mayor's warning glare. "We found something in the walls. An old wallet. Looks like it's been there for decades." Zoe's eyebrows shot up. "A wallet? That's fascinating. Any idea who it belongs to?" Before Jenkins could respond, Mayor Caldwell interjected. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm sure it's nothing of importance. Probably just some old receipts and expired cards. No need to make a fuss." But Zoe couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. The mayor's insistence on downplaying the discovery only fueled her suspicion. She turned to Jenkins, her voice filled with earnest curiosity. "Mr. Jenkins, would you mind if I took a look at the wallet? It could make for an interesting human interest piece." Jenkins hesitated, glancing between Zoe and the increasingly agitated mayor. Finally, he shrugged. "I don't see why not. It's not like it's evidence or anything. Come on, I'll show you where we found it." As they walked towards the partially demolished building, Zoe could feel Mayor Caldwell's eyes boring into her back. She knew she was onto something big. Little did she know, this seemingly innocuous wallet was about to unravel secrets that had been buried for half a century. Secrets that would shake Millbrook to its very core. Chapter 2. The interior of the Jameson building was a maze of exposed beams and crumbling plaster. Zoe carefully picked her way through the debris, following Jenkins to a section of wall that had been partially torn down. There, nestled in a small cavity, lay a battered leather wallet. "Here it is," Jenkins said, carefully extracting the wallet from its hiding place. "Crazy to think it's been here all this time." Zoe's heart raced as she accepted the worn leather object. It was heavier than she expected, its surfaces cracked and faded with age. As she carefully opened it, a musty smell wafted up, carrying with it the weight of decades past. "Let's see what we've got here," she murmured, more to herself than to Jenkins. Inside, she found a driver's license, its plastic yellowed with age. The photo showed a young man with a square jaw and intense eyes. The name read, Thomas Erickson. Erickson. Zoe's brow furrowed. Why does that name sound familiar? Jenkins peered over her shoulder. Erickson? As in Erickson Steel? They practically built this town back in the day. Zoe nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. Erickson Steel had been Millbrook's lifeblood for generations, employing most of the town until its sudden closure 15 years ago. The repercussions were still felt today, with many families never fully recovering from the economic blow. As she continued to sift through the wallet's contents, something slipped out and fluttered to the ground. Zoe bent to retrieve it, realizing it was an old photograph. Her breath caught in her throat as she examined the image. The photo showed two men, one she recognized as the young Thomas Erickson from the license. The other was a face she knew all too well, a younger version of Mayor Richard Caldwell. But it wasn't just the unexpected pairing that shocked her, it was the background. The men stood in front of a building Zoe had only seen in history books, the old Millbrook Bank, which had mysteriously burned down in 1973, taking with it several lives and, as local legend had it, a fortune in gold. Flipping the photo over, Zoe found a handwritten note. T&R, MB Bank Job, 73. Never forget. Her mind reeled. Could this be suggesting what she thought it was? Were Thomas Erickson and Richard Caldwell somehow involved in the infamous bank fire? Before she could process this revelation, a commotion outside caught her attention. Mayor Caldwell's voice rang out, sharp and authoritative. Ms. Thompson, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to turn over that wallet. It's now part of an ongoing investigation. Zoe's journalist instincts kicked into high gear. She knew she couldn't let this evidence out of her sight. In a split-second decision, she slipped the photo into her pocket, her heart pounding. As she emerged from the building, wallet in hand, she was met with the stern faces of Mayor Caldwell and two police officers. The mayor's usually friendly demeanor was gone, replaced by a cold, hard look that sent chills down Zoe's spine. "Hand it over, Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice low and threatening. "And let's forget this ever happened." But Zoe knew she couldn't forget. She had just stumbled upon a story that could change everything, not just for her career, but for the entire town of Millbrook. As she reluctantly handed over the wallet, her mind was already racing, planning her next move. The truth was out there, hidden for 50 years, and Zoe Thompson was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. The interior of the Jameson building was a maze of exposed beams and crumbling plaster. Zoe carefully picked her way through the debris, following Jenkins to a section of wall that had been partially torn down. There, nestled in a small cavity, lay a battered leather wallet. "Here it is," Jenkins said, carefully extracting the wallet from its hiding place. "Crazy to think it's been here all this time." Zoe's heart raced as she accepted the worn leather object. It was heavier than she expected, its surfaces cracked and faded with age. As she carefully opened it, a musty smell wafted up, carrying with it the weight of decades past. "Let's see what we've got here," she murmured, more to herself than to Jenkins. Inside, she found a driver's license, its plastic yellowed with age. The photo showed a young man with a square jaw and intense eyes. The name read, Thomas Erickson. Erickson. Zoe's brow furrowed. Why does that name sound familiar? Jenkins peered over her shoulder. Erickson? As in Erickson Steel? They practically built this town back in the day. Zoe nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. Erickson Steel had been Millbrook's lifeblood for generations, employing most of the town until its sudden closure 15 years ago. The repercussions were still felt today, with many families never fully recovering from the economic blow. As she continued to sift through the wallet's contents, something slipped out and fluttered to the ground. Zoe bent to retrieve it, realizing it was an old photograph. Her breath caught in her throat as she examined the image. The photo showed two men, one she recognized as the young Thomas Erickson from the license. The other was a face she knew all too well, a younger version of Mayor Richard Caldwell. But it wasn't just the unexpected pairing that shocked her, it was the background. The men stood in front of a building Zoe had only seen in history books, the old Millbrook Bank, which had mysteriously burned down in 1973, taking with it several lives and, as local legend had it, a fortune in gold. Flipping the photo over, Zoe found a handwritten note. T&R, MB Bank Job, 73. Never forget. Her mind reeled. Could this be suggesting what she thought it was? Were Thomas Erickson and Richard Caldwell somehow involved in the infamous bank fire? Before she could process this revelation, a commotion outside caught her attention. Mayor Caldwell's voice rang out, sharp and authoritative. "Ms. Thompson, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to turn over that wallet. It's now part of an ongoing investigation." Zoe's journalist instincts kicked into high gear. She knew she couldn't let this evidence out of her sight. In a split-second decision, she slipped the photo into her pocket, her heart pounding. As she emerged from the building, wallet in hand, she was met with the stern faces of Mayor Caldwell and two police officers. The mayor's usually friendly demeanor was gone, replaced by a cold, hard look that sent chills down Zoe's spine. "Hand it over, Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice low and threatening. "And let's forget this ever happened." But Zoe knew she couldn't forget. She had just stumbled upon a story that could change everything, not just for her career, but for the entire town of Millbrook. As she reluctantly handed over the wallet, her mind was already racing, planning her next move. The truth was out there, hidden for 50 years, and Zoe Thompson was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. Zoe's mind was buzzing as she walked briskly away from the Jameson building, her hand unconsciously touching the pocket where she'd stashed the photograph. The weight of its secret pressed against her hip, a constant reminder of the story unfolding before her. As she rounded the corner onto Elm Street, a familiar voice called out, "Zoe, wait up." She turned to see her childhood friend and now local librarian, Marcus Rodriguez, jogging to catch up with her. His warm brown eyes crinkled with concern as he fell into step beside her. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost," Marcus said, studying her face. Zoe hesitated, weighing her options. Marcus had always been her confidant, and his access to the town's archives could prove invaluable. Taking a deep breath, she pulled him into the shadow of an old oak tree. "Marcus, I need your help," she whispered, quickly recounting the events at the Jameson building. As she described the photograph and the cryptic message, Marcus's eyes widened. "Holy crap, Zoe," he breathed. "You realize what this could mean, right? If the mayor was involved in the bank fire." Zoe nodded grimly. "Could explain a lot. The sudden closure of Erickson Steel, the town's economic downturn. But I need proof. I need to connect the dots." Marcus ran a hand through his dark hair, a habit he'd had since they were kids. "Okay, meet me at the library after closing. We'll dig through the archives, see what we can find about Erickson and Caldwell's connection." As they parted ways, Zoe couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, catching a glimpse of a black sedan turning the corner. Paranoia or something more sinister? That evening, as the last patrons trickled out of Millbrook Public Library, Zoe slipped in through the back entrance. Marcus was waiting, a stack of old newspapers and town records spread out on a table in the reference section. "I've pulled everything I could find on the bank fire and Erickson Steel," he said, gesturing to the pile. "But Zoe, be careful. If what you're suggesting is true, we're dealing with powerful people who've kept this secret for decades. They won't give it up easily." Zoe nodded, her determination overriding her fear. "I know, but the truth needs to come out. Millbrook deserves to know what really happened." As they pored over the documents, a pattern began to emerge. Thomas Erickson and Richard Caldwell had been inseparable in their youth, both from prominent families. The night of the bank fire, they had alibis that seemed airtight until Zoe noticed a discrepancy in the timestamps. "Look at this," she said, pointing to two different newspaper articles. Caldwell claimed he was at an Erickson Steel board meeting until 10 p.m., but this society page has him at a charity gala across town at 9:30. He couldn't have been in both places. Marcus leaned in, his brow furrowed. "And here's something else. The bank's gold reserves were reported as a total loss in the fire, but look at this balance sheet from Erickson Steel the following year. There's a massive influx of capital, seemingly out of nowhere." Zoe's heart raced. They were onto something big. But as she opened her mouth to respond, the lights in the library suddenly went out, plunging them into darkness. Marcus fumbled for his phone, its dim light illuminating their shocked faces. Power outage? But Zoe's instincts told her otherwise. We need to get out of here. Now. As if on cue, they heard the sound of footsteps echoing through the darkened library. Adrenaline surging, Zoe and Marcus quickly gathered the most crucial documents, shoving them into Zoe's messenger bag. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the beam of a flashlight sweeping across the bookshelves. This way, Marcus whispered, grabbing Zoe's hand and leading her through a maze of shelves towards the emergency exit. Just as they reached the door, a gruff voice called out, "Stop right there!" Zoe's heart hammered in her chest as she pushed through the exit, triggering the fire alarm. The shrill sound pierced the night air as they burst into the alley behind the library. "My car's around the corner," Marcus panted as they ran. But as they approached his beat-up Honda, Zoe spotted two figures leaning against it. "Wait," she hissed, pulling Marcus back into the shadows. "We can't go that way." A voice crackled over a radio nearby. "They're not here. Must have slipped out the back." Zoe and Marcus exchanged alarmed glances. This was no random break-in. Someone knew they were investigating and wanted to stop them. "We need to split up," Zoe whispered. "They're less likely to follow both of us. Meet me at the old train station in an hour." Marcus hesitated, concern etched on his face. "Zoe, are you sure? This is getting dangerous." She squeezed his hand reassuringly. "I'll be fine. Go." As Marcus disappeared down one alley, Zoe took off in the opposite direction. The sound of pursuing footsteps spurred her on as she weaved through the familiar streets of her hometown, now sinister in the shadows of night. Her mind raced as she ran. Who had sent these men? The mayor? Someone from the Erickson family? How deep did this conspiracy go? After what felt like hours of cat and mouse through Millbrook streets, Zoe finally lost her tail. Breathless and on edge, she made her way to the abandoned train station on the outskirts of town. The old building loomed before her, a relic of Millbrook's more prosperous past. As she slipped inside, the musty smell of decay filled her nostrils. "Marcus?" she called softly, her voice echoing in the empty space. No response. As the minutes ticked by, Zoe's anxiety grew. Where was he? Had something happened? Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a text. Her heart leapt, hoping it was Marcus, but the number was unknown. With trembling fingers, she opened the message. "You're digging in dangerous territory, Ms. Thompson. Back off now or people you care about will get hurt. This is your only warning." Attached was a photo that made Zoe's blood run cold. It showed Marcus, unconscious and tied to a chair in what looked like a basement. As the implications of the threat sank in, Zoe realized she was in way over her head. This was no longer just about uncovering the truth. Now it was about saving her friend and possibly herself. With shaking hands, she dialed the one person she thought she could trust, her mentor and editor at the Millbrook Chronicle, Eleanor Simmons. As the phone rang, Zoe prayed she was making the right choice. Little did she know, her call was about to set in motion a chain of events that would shake Millbrook to its very foundations. The old rotary phone in Eleanor Simmons' dimly lit home office rang shrilly, cutting through the late-night silence. The veteran journalist, her silver hair tied back in a loose bun, reached for the receiver with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. Who would be calling at this hour? "Eleanor? Zoe. I'm in trouble." The young reporter's voice trembled on the other end of the line. As Zoe rapidly explained the situation, Eleanor's journalistic instincts kicked into high gear. She'd always suspected there was more to the Millbrook Bank fire and the subsequent decline of the town, but concrete evidence had always been elusive. "Zoe, listen to me carefully," Eleanor said, her voice low and urgent. "You're not safe at the train station. Come to my house, but be discreet. Use the back roads, and make sure you're not followed." 30 minutes later, Zoe slipped through Eleanor's back door, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Eleanor ushered her into the study, closing the heavy curtains before turning to her protege. "Show me everything you've got," she demanded. As Zoe laid out the evidence of the photograph, the documents from the library. The threatening text. Eleanor's frown deepened. This goes beyond just the mayor and Erickson, she mused. A cover-up this big? It involves half the town's elite. But why? Zoe asked, frustration evident in her voice. Why go to such lengths to hide a 50-year-old crime? Eleanor sighed, reaching for an old leather-bound journal on her bookshelf. Because, my dear, it's not just about the bank robbery. It's about what the stolen money funded. She opened the journal, revealing meticulously documented notes and newspaper clippings. I've been tracking this for years, but could never prove anything. The bank's gold didn't just disappear. It was used to build an empire. Erickson Steel was just the beginning. Zoe's eyes widened as she scanned the pages. Shell companies, offshore accounts, political donations, all tracing back to the night of the fire. They used the gold to buy power, she whispered. Eleanor nodded grimly. And they've been using that power to keep Millbrook under their thumb ever since. The town's decline is by design. Keeps people desperate, easier to control. A chill ran down Zoe's spine as the full implications hit her. This wasn't just a story. It was a war for the soul of her hometown. And now, with Marcus in danger, the stakes were higher than ever. We need to get this story out, Zoe said, determination replacing fear in her eyes. It's not that simple, Eleanor cautioned. We're dealing with powerful people who won't hesitate to silence us. We need irrefutable proof, and we need to ensure our safety before we publish. As if on cue, headlights swept across the curtains, followed by the sound of car doors slamming outside. Eleanor's face paled. They found you. Quick, into the basement. There's a hidden room behind the wine rack. Go. As Zoe descended the stairs, she heard Eleanor opening the front door, her voice carrying a forced cheerfulness. Richard, what brings you here at this hour? Mayor Caldwell's reply was muffled, but his tone was far from friendly. Zoe's heart pounded as she slipped into the hidden room, praying that Eleanor could hold them off. In the musty darkness of Eleanor's hidden basement room, Zoe strained to hear the conversation upstairs. The voices were muffled, but the tension was palpable even through the floorboards. Her phone buzzed silently, another message from the unknown number. Time's running out, Miss Thompson. Make the right choice. Attached was a new photo of Marcus, this time with a visible bruise on his face. Zoe's stomach churned with guilt and fear. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked nearby. Zoe held her breath, pressing herself against the wall. The wine rack slowly slid aside, revealing Eleanor's ashen face. They're gone, she whispered. But we don't have much time. They're watching the house. As they hurried back upstairs, Eleanor filled Zoe in. The mayor knows we're onto something. He tried to play it casual, but he was fishing for information. We need to move fast, Zoe said, her mind racing. But how do we get the truth out and save Marcus? Eleanor's eyes glinted with a mixture of determination and mischief. We fight fire with fire. If they want to play dirty, we'll beat them at their own game. Over the next hour, they formulated a plan. It was risky, potentially career-ending if it went wrong, but it was their best shot at exposing the truth and saving Marcus. I have a contact at the state police, Eleanor explained. Someone not on Millbrook's payroll. If we can get him the evidence, he can move on this officially. Zoe nodded, a glimmer of hope rising in her chest. And I think I know how to find Marcus. The basement in that photo, I recognized some old Erickson Steel equipment. They must be holding him at the abandoned factory on the edge of town. As dawn broke over Millbrook, Zoe and Eleanor put their plan into motion. Zoe headed towards the Erickson Steel factory, armed with nothing but her wits and a hidden camera. Eleanor, meanwhile, made her way to a pre-designated meeting point with her state police contact. The abandoned Erickson Steel factory loomed before Zoe, its rusted gates and broken windows a testament to the town's faded glory. As she approached, she noticed fresh tire tracks in the mud. Someone had been here recently. Her heart pounding, Zoe slipped through a gap in the fence. The vast factory floor was eerily quiet, dust motes dancing in the shafts of early morning light. She made her way towards the administrative section, where she suspected the basement access would be. A muffled sound caught her attention, voices coming from behind a heavy metal door. Zoe pressed her ear against it, straining to hear. "Can't keep this up forever," a gruff voice was saying. "The girl's not backing down." "She will," came the chilling reply. With a start, Zoe recognized Mayor Caldwell's voice. "Once she realizes what's at stake, bring in the librarian." Zoe's breath caught in her throat. Marcus was here and he was in immediate danger. She had to act now, but one wrong move could spell disaster for both of them. As she weighed her options, her phone buzzed one last time. The message that appeared made her blood run cold. "Game over, Ms. Thompson. Time to say goodbye to your friend." Zoe knew she was out of time. With a deep breath, she reached for the door handle, ready to face whatever lay on the other side. The truth about Millbrook's dark past was about to come to light, one way or another. With trembling hands, Zoe turned the door handle. It creaked open, revealing a dimly lit staircase descending into the basement. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead, and began her descent. As she reached the bottom, voices became clearer. She could make out Mayor Caldwell's authoritative tone and another, unfamiliar voice, gruff and impatient. Pressing herself against the wall, Zoe inched closer to the partially open door at the end of the hallway. "I'm telling you, Richard, this has gone too far," the gruff voice insisted. "We should have never let it get to this point." "Calm down, Frank," Mayor Caldwell replied, his voice strained. "We've come too far to back out now. Once we deal with the girl and her friend, everything will go back to normal." Zoe's heart raced. She needed to act fast. Remembering the hidden camera Eleanor had given her, she made sure it was recording and slowly pushed the door open. The scene before her was shocking. Marcus sat tied to a chair, looking battered but defiant. Mayor Caldwell stood over him, while a large man, presumably Frank, paced nervously. Well, Mayor Caldwell said, his face twisting into a sneer as he spotted Zoe. "Miss Thompson, how kind of you to join us. I believe this concludes our game of cat and mouse." "It's over, Mayor," Zoe declared, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know everything about the bank fire, the stolen gold, how you and the Ericksons have been controlling Millbrook for decades. It's time the truth came out." The mayor's face darkened. "You understand nothing, you foolish girl. Everything we did was for the greater good of Millbrook." "Greater good?" Marcus spat, struggling against his bonds. "You've been bleeding this town dry for your own benefit." As tension in the room reached a boiling point, sirens suddenly wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Frank panicked. "The cops? Richard, what do we do?" Mayor Caldwell's composure cracked. "How did they?" His eyes narrowed as he turned to Zoe. "You, what did you do?" Zoe allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. "I didn't come alone, Mayor. While I was distracting you here, my partner was delivering all our evidence to the state police. It's really over this time." The sound of car doors slamming and shouted orders from above signaled the arrival of law enforcement. Mayor Caldwell's face contorted with rage as he lunged for Zoe, but she was quicker. She dodged his grasp and ran to untie Marcus. As the basement door burst open and state police officers flooded in, Zoe helped Marcus to his feet. They watched as Mayor Caldwell and Frank were handcuffed and read their rights. The lead officer, a stern-faced woman, approached Zoe. "Ms. Thompson, I'm Detective Ramirez. Your editor, Ms. Simmons, filled us in. We'll need your full statement, but I want you to know, you've done a great service to your town today." As they were led out of the basement, Zoe felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The truth was finally out, but she knew this was just the beginning of Millbrook's journey to healing. In the weeks that followed, Millbrook was turned upside down. The story Zoe and Eleanor published in the Millbrook Chronicle sent shockwaves through the community. As more details emerged, longtime residents grappled with the reality that their town's decline had been orchestrated by those they had trusted most. The investigation expanded beyond Mayor Caldwell and the Ericksons, implicating several prominent families and businesspeople. The web of corruption and deceit ran deep, touching nearly every aspect of Millbrook's governance and economy. Zoe found herself at the center of a media storm. Reporters from national outlets descended on the small town, all clamoring for interviews with the young journalist who had cracked open a 50-year-old conspiracy. But for Zoe, the most poignant moments came in the quieter interactions with her fellow Millbrook residents. People would stop her on the street, some to thank her for her bravery, others to express their disbelief and sorrow at the revelations. One crisp autumn morning, Zoe sat with Marcus and Eleanor at the local diner. The place was buzzing with conversation, all centered around the latest developments in the ongoing investigation. "I still can't believe it," Marcus said, shaking his head. "All those years, all those struggles our families went through, it was all by design." Eleanor patted his hand. "The important thing is that it's over now. Millbrook has a chance to rebuild, to become the town it was always meant to be." Zoe nodded, her gaze drifting to the window. Outside, she could see signs of change already taking hold. A group of volunteers was cleaning up the old park. There were whispers of reopening the Erickson steel factory under new, ethical management. "It won't be easy," Zoe mused. "There's so much hurt, so much mistrust to overcome. But for the first time in a long time, there's hope." As they finished their coffee, Zoe's phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her gasp. "Millbrook scandal sparks nationwide investigation into small-town corruption." She showed it to Eleanor and Marcus, a mix of pride and trepidation washing over her. What had started as a local exposé was now shining a light on similar situations across the country. "Looks like your story is far from over, kid," Eleanor said with a proud smile. Zoe took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had started this journey seeking the truth about her town's past, but now she realized her role in shaping its future, and perhaps the future of many other towns like Millbrook. As they left the diner, stepping out into the brisk autumn air, Zoe felt a renewed sense of purpose. The lost wallet had been more than just a key to the past. It had become a catalyst for change, a chance for redemption, and a new beginning for Millbrook. The town around her was transforming, shedding the shadows of its past and embracing a future built on truth and transparency. And Zoe knew, as she watched her neighbors come together to rebuild their community, that the real story of Millbrook was just beginning. Thank you very much for listening to this story. Comment below what you thought of the ending and from which city you're listening to us. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, click on the next story that's appearing on your screen now. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories together. See you soon.